The year was 2020. 4 years have passed since Doom crawled its way back out of hell and into the sticky trousers of gamers worldwide. And since then, id Software spent those 4 years trying to answer questions. Questions like, how do you follow up a masterpiece? How do you improve perfection? How do you do even harder than Doom 2016? These are questions that many thought there weren't answers to. I mean, how can you possibly make a masterpiece better? Hold on a second. You guys smell that?
I didn't think this shit could get any better. Is that a fucking flamethrower? Holy fuck, this boss fight's insane. Is that a goddamn meat hook? Jesus Christ, hell better get ready to gargle my fucking nutsack, cause Doomslayer is so fucking back.
Doom Eternal is a successor, a standout, and an evolution of the masterpiece that came before it. It's no secret that Doom 2016 is a perfect, demon-slaying rush of fluid, adrenaline-fueled violence. And when faced with a sequel to something so fundamentally perfect, you might be wondering, what did they do?
Well, what the fuck do you think? What is this fucking Ubisoft? This is id fucking Software we're talking about. They're not gonna follow up their success with some half-baked rendition of the same game. That shit is for pussies. They fucking innovate. Lightning doesn't strike twice, but I do. So you better take that formulaic bullshit and shove it straight up your ass, because Doom Eternal is bigger and bolder in every fucking way.
Doom 2016 never gave a fuck, so why should Eternal? id Software took 2016's formula, spanked it on the ass, and evolved it into something new and different that still remains true to Doom's core design philosophy. A longer campaign, twice the enemy types, a fuckload of new mechanics, and 3 times the testosterone makes Doom Eternal truly live up to what a sequel should be. It takes 2016's foundation and evolves every aspect of it. It's bigger, longer, faster, deeper, and more violent, just like your ex-wife's new boyfriend. And whether it's better is entirely up to you, because it's just as fucking awesome. Whether you prefer the simple, focused experience of 2016 or the complex, fast and difficult gauntlet that is Doom Eternal, one thing can be said for sure. Doom Eternal knows how to fuck shit up. Hi everyone, I'm Jay, and today I'm going to talk about how fucking awesome Doom Eternal is. If you haven't watched my video on Doom 2016, go check it out before this one. And as for the rest of you, let's take another page out of Doomslayer's book and rip and tear our way through this game with 0 fucks given. So buckle up kids, cause Doom Eternal fucking rules, and I'm gonna tell you why. Let's start with the name of the game, the combat. And Doom Eternal's combat takes 2016's foundation and dials every metric up to 11. Everything is faster, you have infinitely more tools and mechanics to use, and infinitely more enemies to violate. But make no mistake, this is still Doom. You're still driven by that singular motivation to fuck shit up in bloody, violent fashion. Combat is still a testosterone-fueled rush of adrenaline and gore, but it's faster, far more complex, and far more difficult this time around.
Holy fuck! That was diabolical!
Doom's foundation, its core elements, emphasize fluid movement and replenishing resources through aggression, and that remains unchanged in Eternal. But resources are more scarce, decisions must be made faster, and is far more mechanically demanding to master. Where 2016 reveled in its simplicity, Doom Eternal's combat excels in its complexity. It's a far more difficult game, but it's far more rewarding because of it. The most immediate increase in speed can be attributed to the dash. Doomslayer can dash now and it feels incredibly natural. It sits not only as an evolution that fits so well you'd be hard pressed not to wonder where it's been the whole franchise, but it's the inception of every other design implementation in the game. With the dash giving the Slayer a huge increase in mobility, enemies and their projectiles are far faster to compensate. Where you could once easily strafe to the side of Pinkies or run circles around Hell Knights and gun them down with little thought, in Doom Eternal, that's no longer an option. You can easily find yourself surrounded and overwhelmed in an instant, and the dash is an incredibly important mechanic with a far greater skill ceiling that's integral to master. But what complements the uptick in speed and enemy density is Blood Punch. The next in a long line of new mechanics, Doomslayer's melee now hits like a wet napkin, yes, but every few glory kills you can execute a damaging short-range super punch that's perfect for getting out of corners or when you're surrounded. When in doubt, Blood Punch your way out. It's a largely passive mechanic that doesn't take much intuition to implement. You do glory kills all the time, and you'll likely Blood Punch all the time because it's the same input. But it's an instance of depth nonetheless, a crucial close-range crowd control tool that does have room to use it tactically. And with combat as chaotic and dense as this game's, you'll end up using Blood Punch a lot. With faster gameplay comes quicker decision making, but Doom Eternal also makes those decisions far more critical. Unlike most other shooters, restoring health, ammo, and armor isn't done through retreating or taking cover. That's pussy shit. In Doom, if you want your resources replenished, then you better charge fully cocked to a horde of demons and start ripping heads off, cutting imps in half, and burning shit alive, because that's just how Doomslayer rolls. It's about aggression. Violence is a solution, not the problem. It's the perfect blend of intrinsic motivation and extrinsic incentive. You want to fuel the loop of gruesome violence not only because it looks fucking awesome and makes you feel like a badass, but because you have to if you want to restore your health, armor, and ammo. Starting with health and Doom's most defining mechanic, glory kills are still at the core of what makes Doom so uniquely exhilarating. They remain the same in concept, just more violent and satisfying in every way. Giving Doomslayer a blade in his gauntlet doesn't change anything mechanically, but it turns a whole new page in terms of ways you can rip and tear demons apart in gruesome, blissful fashion. You still rely on glory kills for health, and you still perform them by staggering enemies until they're open to a finisher, but it's not 100% identical to how it was in 2016. The health you get back is marginally less, and when it comes to glory killing fodder enemies like imps, it requires more intent than it has in the past. Imps themselves pose less of a risk thanks to how fast you can move around environments, but with how scarce resources are, they're far more vital to sustaining them. But make no mistake, their numbers can easily still creep up on you and become dangerous. Glory kills function the same, but are more methodical when it comes to fodder, which adds depth, and it doesn't hurt that they're even more gruesome this time around. Something that you'll immediately notice in Doom Eternal is just how scarce ammo is. Compared to the first game, your max capacity for most weapons is more than halved, and there's far less of it scattered throughout the arenas. But don't worry too much about that, because guess who's back and more fun than ever. The chainsaw of course is back, and it functions the same, but it's far more integrated into the gameplay loop. In 2016, the chainsaw wasn't much more than an incredibly fun last resort. Ammo was plentiful, and you found yourself rarely needing to use it. But that's not the case in Doom Eternal. In this game, you're constantly running out of ammo. But with how much fun the chainsaw is, having to use it more is not something to complain about. So, glory kills replenish health, the chainsaw sustains ammo, but what about armor? Well, meet the Flame Belt. A cooldown-based flamethrower that burns enemies to a crisp and drops armor for you. Extending the circle of resource management, adding a way to restore armor just makes sense. As enemies burn, you get armor, and on death, they drop a fuckload more of it. If you do a glory kill, you don't get the juicy armor drop though. Another sound addition to the Slayer's kit that's yet another mechanic to juggle. Doom Eternal has mastered its loop of sustainability through aggressive play. You want health? Do a glory kill. Need ammo? Use the chainsaw. Want armor? Burn them alive and DPS them down. Everything you need to fuel combat drives you further into the onslaught. Doom Eternal never wants you to let up, and with how much more there is here, it never stops being fun either. Doom's ammo scarcity also makes weapon choice all the more impactful. You're constantly switching weapons and deciding which mods to use, and these choices are determined by the environment and more importantly, the enemies in front of you. The combat shotgun is back as your starting weapon, and its only real use is the grenade launcher. But the heavy cannon is a more badass version of 2016's heavy assault rifle, and its sound design is just... The plasma gun is also back, and with clear strengths of dealing with shields and staggering fodder quickly, and its mods give you the choice between an AoE heat blast and a single target damage beam. The ballista is new however, and it's the Gauss Cannon's spiritual successor with its high damage, low fire rate, precise nature, and you can lean even heavier into its strengths with an Arbalest mod, or clear an entire room of squishy demons with its destroyer blade. The rocket launcher is also back, and it's still a rocket launcher. And yeah, you still have a fucking minigun. And yeah, you can still turn it to fucking Bastion. But the super shotgun, Doom's most iconic weapon, has somehow found a way to become my new favorite thing. and it hasn't changed too much, except they gave it a fucking meat hook, and it's now both a devastating close-range weapon and a key traversal tool that completely transforms combat. You can use it to close gaps and get close to enemies, or launch yourself across the arena and gain high ground. Enemies are now traversal tools that you can use to your advantage, and it's just so fucking fun to use, and mastering the meat hook's movement and utility potential is so very rewarding. Doom Eternal has a lot of new fun toys to play with. The frag grenade also makes a return with the addition of an ice grenade to swap between. And as for your all-powerful get out of jail free cards, well, you remember the BFG 9000, don't you?
Nice.
Of course this bad boy's back. And when it comes to colossal tools of destruction, Doom Eternal has no shortage. By around halfway through the game, you also pick up the Crucible, a pure Argent energy sword that kills anything that you use it on. And if you complete all 6 Slayer gates, you're rewarded with the Unmaker, which does this. These weapons have scarcely finite ammo pools that can only be replenished through pickups found in arenas. And you'd have more luck finding my dad at my baseball game than you would some BFG or Crucible charges, which isn't good. But its scarcity makes using it a true last-ditch effort that you have to use strategically. They're incredibly powerful, but also incredibly rare. Every weapon and mod in Doom Eternal is designed with a purpose. Between the array of enemy types you fight, your arsenal is carefully crafted around how to best annihilate each enemy, and something else this game introduces are enemy weak points. You can target specific areas on different demons to weaken them and even change their behavior. Utilizing the sniper shot or the ballista, you can shoot the arm cannons off a Mancubus and turn it into a slow, useless blob that reminds me of your mother. What the fuck? You can also shoot the guns off an Arachnotron or the rocket launchers off Revenants and eliminate their ability to do ranged attacks. Every enemy type has a weakness and a preferred weapon or mod to best exploit it. Your plasma gun is perfect for destroying shields and even causes a small explosion when they break. Cacodemons are best dealt with by lobbing grenades or missiles in its mouth, and the chain gun is best used against tanks like Hell Knights and Barons, and you can use the ice grenade against invisible specters and whiplash enemies. Doom Eternal's arsenal and enemy design are intertwined. Each weapon has a purpose, and you can find every enemy's weakness right in the codex. All the tools you need to master combat are given to you. It's a system built around swapping weapons and mods quickly and strategically, and that was the case in 2016. But here, it's even further emphasized by your ammo scarcity. It's more complex. There's depth in rewarding precision and rapid weapon swapping, and utilizing the whole of the arsenal is much more of a necessity than it is a choice. The novelty of relying on 1 or 2 weapons is gone here, and I'm sure that has ruffled some feathers. But the result is a system that doesn't just motivate, but demands mastery over the entire arsenal, and that you engage with everything that Doom Eternal has to offer. While Doomslayer's weapon wheel might not have gotten much bigger, the same can't be said for the number of enemy types. Nearly double what 2016 had, there's a wide variety of new and returning demons. The array of new cyber demons take existing enemies and introduce more difficult variants of them. Prowlers, Whiplash, and Arachnotrons offer new, mid-tier threats that are dangerous in different ways. And even beyond demons, you fight a few maker enemy types in the late game sections. And as for the big boys, where Barons and Mancubus demons were 2016's toughest of the tough, Eternal kicks things up a notch, with demons even stronger. Tyrants are essentially juiced up Barons with lock-on missiles that can only be avoided with a well-timed dodge. Archvowels are the horrifying successor to the Summoner, and make any combat encounter extremely difficult, as not only do they speed up every enemy's movement and attack speed, but they also spawn additional demons, including Barons and Tyrants, which makes them one of the most threatening enemies in the game. Doom Eternal is a much harder game, and that's reflected in its enemy types. And that's never more clear when looking at this game's toughest enemy, and one of the biggest points of contention, Marauders.
Oh, fuck.
Marauders are mini-boss style enemy types that are pretty polarizing amongst fans. A common criticism that surrounds them is that they're designed in a way that just isn't fun to fight. They are difficult, yes, but their non-stop aggressive nature, tanky health pools, invulnerability, and attack windows tighter than a nun boxes the player into having only one strict and tedious way of fighting them. And I mostly agree with this sentiment. Marauders from a distance are invincible and fire projectiles at you, and when you're up close, they're also invincible and will fire a shotgun to knock you back. The only way to damage them is to space yourself at the perfect mid-range distance and bait out a specific melee attack. And fighting anything else at the same time as a Marauder just becomes instantly frustrating in a way that's just not fun. I don't have an issue with Marauders in a 1v1 situation. When the game treats it like a boss fight, it's engaging. They're a puzzle to solve, and learning to capitalize on its attack windows is part of the fun. But you do fight far too many of them. Fighting a Marauder eventually starts to feel like a drag with how repetitive that fight gets and how long it takes to kill them. And with any other ads present, they're just too frustrating to fight, as it's nearly impossible to gain any semblance of space or distance from them, and they demand precise spacing and timing to kill, which is pretty fucking hard to do with a small army also gunning for your nutsack. But where the Marauder's design as a mini-boss has its flaws, Doom Eternal's main boss fights are a different story. There are 4 total in the base game, and they're all good. The Doom Hunter eventually becomes a reoccurring super heavy enemy type, and that fight plays out more like a normal combat encounter, but the Gladiator is a proper designed boss fight. Its first phase doesn't make for a very engaging fight with its beefy invulnerable shield staring back at you for most of it, but its second phase is excellent. There are intricate attack patterns that you have to learn and time your dodges to. Positioning and timing is crucial and mistakes are damaging. It's a great fight. And it only gets better because the Conmaker boss fight is also great. As she rains down flurries of projectiles from above, you have to manage the environment and the enemies around you, dish out damage, and use your meat hook to get in close for the finishing blow. And if the Conmaker is a great fight, then the Icon of Sin is an insane one. A colossal sized demon with a tanky as fuck health bar, shooting the body parts off something this large and winning really pushes that power fantasy forward of being the badass edgelord supreme that nobody wants to fuck with. This fight also has waves of super heavy demons spawn around you, with charges for your BFG and Crucible letting you unleash those big boys of destruction as much as you want in a way that you haven't been able to do before in the game, which is not only a lot of fun, but it also balances your split attention between shooting the boss and dealing with all the ads. Doom Eternal's combat has a lot to it. The game throws new mechanics at you constantly, and the way that it teaches them to you is where my first major criticism derives from. Tutorial screens. They're overused. There are a lot of new and returning mechanics that are very important to learn, and the way Doom Eternal teaches them to you is by pausing the game and making you read. And this happens well beyond the first few levels to every new mechanic and major enemy type introduced. And I can let something like this slide on the first level, and with anything that you pick up in the Fortress of Doom. But pausing the game 2 to 3 times a level for the entire first half of the game kinda disrupts the flow. Where a simple tooltip would suffice, the game feels the need to hold your hand at every turn. There are no intuitively designed encounters that teach new mechanics to you naturally. Instead of pausing the game and making me read about how the dash works, why don't you put a tooltip on the screen and a traversal section in front of me? I don't need to be teleported to a tutorial room to learn about shooting enemy weak points. And this even goes so far as to reteach mechanics that you should already know in the DLC. Something meant to be played after the main campaign, which is puzzling. The final boss of the last DLC and the entire fucking game begins with a tutorial screen. There have been plenty of games before that manage to teach complex mechanics to players through intuitive design. Have some faith in your players, they'll figure it out. And if they don't, everything you need to know can be read in the codex. You can turn off these tutorial screens in the menu, yes, but that doesn't solve the problem, because you still need to learn these mechanics. And if you turn that off, then there's literally nothing to teach them to you. At the end of the day, this is a very minor complaint. It doesn't ruin the experience whatsoever, it just stops it unnecessarily from time to time, because there is still so much more to love about Doom Eternal. And it doesn't end here. Where Doom Eternal's combat has seen some major evolutions since 2016, those moments of calm in between combat are still built around traversal, exploration, and progression, but it's not without its changes. Traversal has seen some additions. Doomguy can climb, swing off monkey bars, and even swim through some levels. And combined with the dash, traversal is far more involved than it's been in the past. Like the rest of the game, it's more complex. While I wouldn't say it's necessarily better than 2016's simple but fluid movement, traversal sections in Doom Eternal play more like puzzles that push you to juggle different movement mechanics and find ways to get across. But as for exploration and progression, well, they're still just as intertwined. Field drones are back to give you weapon mods, and so are runes, which give you up to 3 chosen buffs. Although rune trials have not returned with them. Praetor tokens are similar to how they are in 2016, and sentinel crystals are your new upgrades to health, armor, and ammo that also give you perks when filling out this UI. Upgrading survivability, ammo sustain, and utility is still rewarded through exploration, and levels are still huge sprawling spaces with hidden secrets everywhere. But when it comes to upgrading your weapons, it's entirely combat focused. Doing every combat encounter in each mission rewards you with your weapon tokens to upgrade your mods, and this includes secret encounters, which are hidden gore nests that spawn a secret timed combat wave. And these don't restore any ammo or resources on activation or on failure, making its difficulty entirely based on how much ammo you currently have, which I'm not a huge fan of. But what I am a huge fan of are the 6 Slayer gates that you have to find, that also serve as some of the toughest encounters that this game has to offer. And upon doing all 6, you're rewarded with the Unmaker. One of the best examples of good side content that rewards its challenging nature with a big fucking gun that you can use to fuck shit up with. And beyond all that, there are other secrets that you can find. There's a variety of songs from id's past game catalog that you can listen to in the Fortress, and cheat codes, modifiers that you can turn on and replay levels with. And there are some admittedly fun ones here like infinite ammo, party mode, and famine. When you're not fucking ass and curb stomping names, you're exploring, moving through traversal sections and looking for upgrades and secrets. And if not, you're in the Fortress of Doom. When it comes to the game's overall structure and pacing, one of the most conflicting conclusions is the addition of a main hub, the Fortress of Doom, an admittedly fitting name for a demon-killing demigod. You stop by the fortress in between most missions in the game, and you can use the sentinel batteries you find to unlock upgrades and skins for your Slayer. And having a hub world is inherently nice. You have a space to practice combat, listen to the songs you collect in levels, and that's about it. But it comes at the cost of slowing down the pacing between missions. Everything that you can do in the fortress, barring a few progression items that you can collect, can also be done in the main menu, which is why I don't think it justifies its existence in my opinion. Sure, the hub is cool, but stopping here after every mission slows the game down where it absolutely would be a more continuous and fluid experience if it didn't. If you disagree, then I implore you to take a look at the Ancient Gods expansion. 7 huge levels that completely ignore this hub's existence, and it's a more fluid, fast-paced, and engaging experience because of it. And this is no doubt another minor complaint, a nitpick if you will.
Get some help.
At the end of the day, it doesn't affect the experience enough to worsen my opinion of this game, but I believe it to be true nonetheless. Nitpick? Yeah. But also,
What the fuck did you think a 40-something minute video would be about?
but regardless, this game still fucking rules. With how complex and layered Doom Eternal's combat is, it takes most people the whole campaign to truly master it. Knowing the best weapons and mods for each enemy, knowing when to best use tools like Blood Punch, Flame Belch, and Ice Grenades. By the time you've beaten the game for the first time, you've probably only just started to really get good and master all the different tools and experience this combat at its peak. And that's the perfect time to jump into master levels. If there was an end game to Doom Eternal, this would be it. 4 difficult, handcrafted versions of previous levels that dial the insanity up to 11 in the most ridiculously challenging way possible. Master levels completely rework combat encounters, whether it's filling rooms with smoke so you can only see at point blank range, or covering the floor in purple sticky goo so you can't move, or just spawning way too many tyrants, archviles, and marauders. Every combat section is completely remade and spawns 2 to 3 times as many waves that can take well over an hour to clear just one mission on normal difficulty. It's a true endgame test of skill. If you think you've mastered this game's combat, beating these missions on every difficulty will certainly confirm it, because this shit is just insane. How would you like to fight 2 marauders in a narrow hallway where you also need to keep refilling your rad suit on top of an onslaught of pinkies and other ads?
Because why the fuck not? Does that sound like a fun time? How do you even fight this? I guess I'll just go fuck myself.
Master levels are gauntlets of non-stop chaos and difficulty, and are a great piece of challenging endgame content that truly pushes your skills to its limit.
Rip and tear until it is done.
Well, you know what they say, another Doom, another banger soundtrack from Mick Gordon. Once again, he created a concoction of head-banging metal music that sets the nightmare-fueled combat and atmosphere perfectly. But there's just one glaring problem. One thing about this game's music that I just can't forgive.
Why the fuck isn't it louder? I can still hear myself think. What is this? Turn it the fuck up.
While Doom 2016's soundtrack is still better overall, the tracks that slap here hit just as hard. It's just not as consistent. Not every track feels tailor-made for each level and environment, and with the music at max volume, it's just not fucking loud enough. Doom 2016's music was just as loud as the gunfire and sound effects because it was just as integral to the experience, and that's just not the case in Doom Eternal. The final cutscene of this campaign reuses 2016's At Doom's Gate song in a horribly mixed implementation that just feels lazy, and you can't even hear any of the dialogue over the music. The quality is just not as good, and it turns out there is a pretty good reason for that. If you don't know, Mick Gordon, the composer of Doom 2016 and Eternal's soundtrack, was treated horribly by higher-ups at id Software, and were some of the most toxic clients imaginable, who not only withheld his pay, gave him unrealistic deadlines without supplying him with the means to meet them, but also slandered his name and threw him right under the bus when people noticed that the quality was not up to par. If you haven't seen it, there's a really good video that dives into everything that happened in detail by Mild Conviction that I recommend checking out, because it's a huge story with a lot more to it that I haven't mentioned, and it's a great video, link in description. I know it's not relevant to most of the game and how it is today, but Mick Gordon's mistreatment throughout the development of this game was horrible to learn about, and the game's quality, to no fault of his own, suffered because of it. And it's sad, because it's safe to say that Mick Gordon will not be returning for Doom the Dark Ages, and we're all the worse off for it. But with all that said, most of the soundtrack still fucking slaps. From the moment you start up the campaign, that heavy metal soundscape still dick slaps you in the face and drops your balls a few centimeters to let you know it's time to fuck shit up. Doom Eternal still feels like it's always playing boss music, because you're always in a boss fight. It's just you who's the boss. But there's something else that's different about this game. Something else that's evolved from its predecessor. Is that A cutscene? Holy shit, there's another one. Doom 2016's story followed a very simple storyline that was largely told in the background, out of focus. It was an easy to follow plot that wasn't much more than a good excuse to fuck up some demons, and that's part of what made it work so well. But there was also a mountain of interesting world building and lore that was left mostly unexplored, and Doom Eternal dives headfirst into all of it. There are actual cutscenes now. It tells a complicated story that revolves around gods and other dimensions and even the Slayer's own origins. And it's confusing as shit. The game doesn't give you much exposition because this is still Doom. Your only job is still, first and foremost, to fuck shit up. But this time there's a much more complex story around it, and understanding it does make the experience better. But if you want to do that, you have to start reading codex entries, or go down the YouTube Doom lore rabbit hole, which is currently where I'm stuck in, and I'm not getting out anytime soon. The game picks up sometime after 2016. Hell has invaded Earth and is allied with the Conmaker, the leader of a race known as the Makers from another dimension who are essentially an allegory for heaven and its angels. And as shit hits the fan, it's up to Doomguy to hunt down all the hell priests that made him and put a bullet through the Conmaker's skull. The story takes us to a lot of different places with a stark contrast of different environments, from the chaotic, war-torn Earth to the lush Sentinel homeworld to the flaming depths of hell, and all the way to Urdak's magical, heavenly atmosphere. And fuck me sideways, Doom's art direction has never looked this fucking good. Seeing flashbacks of Doomguy's origins was one of the most interesting parts of the story for me. With each Hellpriest he kills, we get another glimpse into his past, and oh shit, this is the Doomguy from the classic games. There are still questions though, like who the fuck is the Seraphim, and what is the Father, and is he God? I don't know, shit's confusing. Maybe I'd know more if I started reading codex entries, but I'd rather dismember demons. But even if you don't understand everything that's happening, Doomslayer is still a badass fucking unit that nobody wants to fuck with, and the music, story, and tone convey that in the most entertainingly badass way imaginable.
Prepare for his careful extraction. We were given specific orders.
Hearing broadcasts issuing evacuation warnings that the Slayer is here and you better stay the fuck out of his way is just fucking awesome. The way people just stop in their tracks in disbelief when they see Doomguy makes him feel even more like an urban legend of sheer testosterone and will.
You can't be here.
I mean, we're talking about the same guy who climbs into an orbital cannon and launches himself across Mars's atmosphere just to save some time. Oh, what's that? We have to get to the core of Mars?
You can't just shoot a hole into the surface of Mars.
The portal is ready.
Yeah, why not make a big fucking gun even bigger with the BFG 10,000 and blow a hole in Mars? Because fuck you, I can. After exploring the Slayer's origins, tracking down Samuel Hayden, and killing all the Hell Priests, with a lot of in between, we eventually go to Hell and learn about the Conmaker's evil pact with the Dark Lord, to let Hell invade Earth and use it as their personal fleshlight to take all of Earth's souls and use them to fuel the Maker's homeworld. But Doomslayer isn't just gonna take that, so after a lot more, he goes to Urdak, kills the Conmaker, and then kills a big fucking kaiju-sized demon, the Icon of Sin, because he's Doomslayer, and he can. Doom Eternal's story expands on everything that 2016 hinted at, and puts the most interesting parts of the world and lore front and center. This isn't some generic sci-fi story that plays out in the background anymore. It's an interdimensional war with a layered history and mountains of intriguing lore, and only the demon-killing demigod himself stands any chance of saving Earth, and if anyone gets in his way, they're gonna regret it. Okay, we're not done with this game yet, sports fans, because there are 2 DLC expansions that give us more enemies, more mechanics, and more Doom to play through. The Ancient Gods Part 1 continues the story of the campaign and picks up with Doomguy on the hunt for the mysterious Seraphim, whose help he needs to stop Hell from taking over Urdak. Part 1 of the DLC is very much an extension of the base game. There aren't any major additions, it's just more of a great thing. The first of the 3 sizable levels is a sprawling UAC base that's in the middle of an ocean, and it looks pretty fucking cool. There are unsurprisingly some swimming sections here, and you now need oxygen to swim, so yay, new mechanic! Woo! Although you cannot fight this shark, which I think is a huge wasted opportunity. 2 out of 10 I want a refund. New enemy types are also introduced, and the first one you meet is the turret. which does exactly what you think. But the second one is the Spirit, a ghost that possesses other demons and makes them stronger, faster, and immune to CC, and the only way to kill them is by using the microwave beam on your plasma gun. Where the turret was a rather underwhelming addition to the roster, the Spirit poses a prominent threat that gives use to a mod I found largely forgettable throughout the base game. The third level also introduces the Bloodmaker, who are invulnerable to all damage when they're not attacking, and have to be taken out with a precise headshot during their attack animation. When it comes to exploration and progression, the sprawling aquatic base and the levels following it have almost nothing to find or collect, with the exception of a few Slayer gates and secret encounters. And these do reward you with something new in the form of support runes, an additional support-focused rune slot that ends up being a very minor addition that changes almost nothing gameplay-wise, but having more Slayer gates to do is never a bad thing. But as you make your way through some creative traversal sections and a fuckload of combat encounters, you eventually find the Seraphim, and it's Samuel Hayden. Okay, I guess. Not sure how that works exactly, but I don't feel like reading, so... The second level takes Doomguy to the swamps of hell in an effort to retrieve the Father's life sphere, and culminates with a boss fight of sorts with the Trials of Malagog. Fighting two glorified turret cubes while Hell Knight's and Pinky's gun-fear nutsack turned out to be both challenging and fun in all the right ways, and was a good way to end the level. And with that, the Slayer finds the Father's life sphere, but also finds the Dark Lords with it. Yeah, Satan. Doomguy takes the Father's life sphere, brings it before the Seraphim, and gives the guy who gave him his powers the big fat fuck you and breaks it in front of his own eyes. And the Slayer goes back to Urdak with the goal of releasing the Dark Lord instead. You know, so he can kill him. The third and final level of part 1 is a lot of... and ends with one of my favorite boss fights in the whole game. The Seraphim fight is incredibly well balanced and combines everything introduced in the DLC in one culminating battle. From the way the arena floor changes in each phase to add levels of verticality and environmental dangers, to the floating turrets and the spirit shields in between phases, and combined with the perfect amount of adds to make it challenging but not frustrating, I found this fight to be one of the best balanced and designed boss fights in the whole game. So after killing the very guy who gives us our demon slaying powers, we set the Dark Lord free, and he's... Doomguy? Okay, fine, I'll start reading. Okay, the Dark Lord and Doomguy are both Prime Veils, the champions of their realms, so they look the same. But the Dark Lord is also God, and he created all the dimensions, and Doomguy himself, so... what the fuck? Where the Ancient Gods Part 1 is a faithful extension of the base game, it doesn't change or evolve the gameplay in any significant way. And it doesn't necessarily have to, but the Ancient Gods Part 2 is Doom Eternal fully realized. There are significantly more new weapons, tools, enemies, and mechanics here, and they are a breath of fresh air that take this game to its maximum potential. The Ancient Gods 2 picks up right where we left off. Doomguy is hunting down the Dark Lord, and we have to rip and tear our way through dimensions and get to Hell's capital city and stick a super shotgun right up his pasty ass. The first level starts you out on a lush Sentinel homeworld where meat hook grapple points are immediately introduced, and it's about fucking time. Having one of the most enjoyable mechanics in the game get left out of traversal sections for this long is a real head scratcher. It's universally known that grappling hooks are always awesome, so better late than never, I guess. But the freight train of new toys to play with doesn't stop here. Armored Barons are a new enemy type that have a coat of metal armor that can only be destroyed with the plasma gun. And Screechers are a new type of imp that buffs the fuck out of other enemies around him. But there's also a new weapon introduced here. Meet the Sentinel Hammer. An Argent Energy sledgehammer just feels right. And it's recharged through glory kills and weak point hits, so you'll use this puppy a lot more than the Crucible. Its slam attack stuns enemies, drops ammo, and enhances the effects of Flame Belch and Ice Grenade. It's a powerful new tool that's baked into this DLC's combat seamlessly. You can use it to extend attack windows of Marauders and Armored Barons, or get a fuckload of health and armor back when paired correctly with a Flame Belch or Ice Grenade. Much like the rest of the Slayer's arsenal, the Sentinel Hammer is balanced around new enemy types and is designed with a purpose. And it does inherently make the game a bit easier, but if it's fun, does that really matter? But anyways, after acquiring our new toy, Doomguy casually rides a fucking wyvern off to some mountains where he finds the new side content of the expansion, Escalation Encounters, what's essentially a two-wave gore nest. The first one upgrades your Sentinel Hammer, and the second is an optional, more difficult wave that gives you a cosmetic, similar to Slayer Gates and other combat-focused side content that presents an optional challenging encounter to those who want it. But back to the main objective here. Doomslayer rips a few more heads off and goes into the next mission on Reclaimed Earth. Another gorgeous environment to stare at, where we also meet some new enemy types. The Cursed Prowler is a pesky little fuck who on contact, slows you down and takes away your ability to dash until you can track him down and blood punch him. There's also the Stone Imp, who can only be killed with the Sentinel Hammer or the Auto Shotgun mod, finally giving that useless mod a purpose. And also meet these Riot Shield guys, whose shields can't be destroyed with the plasma gun, forcing you to get around them to get a line of sight and deal any damage. So after saying hi to all these wonderful new demons, Doomguy eventually makes it to the capital of Hell, Amora, and one of the coolest missions in the game. As armies of Sentinels launch against the capital of Amora, this mission is an all-out war, and it's fucking awesome. Seeing armies of demons and sentinels fighting in the environments around you for the entire level creates a real sense of scale that makes this mission feel like a finale. Doomguy fights his way through demon after demon until he eventually confronts the Dark Lord. And with the final boss of this DLC and the game as a whole, the Dark Lord's boss fight is disappointing.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
While the narrative elements surrounding it and his visual design itself is really good, the fight essentially boils down to a 5-phase Marauder fight. That's right, the single worst designed enemy in the game is used as the blueprint for this boss. The Dark Lord is essentially a bigger, stronger Marauder that heals himself on every mistake you make. In his first phase, you have to bait out a specific mid-ranged melee attack and use a well-timed super shotgun followed by a Sentinel Hammer hit after to fully stun him and open him up for damage. He also spawns hounds that drop hammer charges in between damage cycles, and you have to rinse and repeat this very slow process until his health bar is gone. And God forbid you make a mistake or shoot him when you're not supposed to, he'll heal right back up to full HP. Phase 2 of the fight is pretty much the same, except he spawns an extra dog and has a couple of new attacks, and Phase 3 is the same again, except he spawns a fuck ton of ads to make your life a bit more miserable in between damage cycles. I found this final boss fight disappointing, not because it was hard, but because it was boring. For 5 health bars and 3 phases, the fight barely changes. 2 new attacks and an annoying wave of ads don't change how repetitive waiting for that one specific green flash of opportunity gets. It has all the same problems as Marauders. The fight drags on and is limited to that one specific way you're allowed to damage him. For the majority of the fight, you end up just waiting, moving side to side because his attacks are easy to dodge and there isn't much else you can do besides charge your hammer and wait. This fight tested my patience far more than it did my skill. But with all that said, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a bad boss fight. At the very least, it's a good spectacle, and while tedious and repetitive, functionally, the fight feels balanced. And as for the story, the game ends with the Slayer killing the Dark Lord and sending every demon in all dimensions back to hell permanently. And Doomguy finally rests, as he's put back in his coffin, the world be damned if he's ever needed again. The Ancient Gods is a worthy expansion to a game that just fucking rules. While Part 1 is very much more of the same badass game, Part 2 feels like a mechanical leap forward, with how many new additions there was to the gameplay. Both parts are a gauntlet of peak first-person shooter game design that expands on the beautiful environments, engaging combat that gets a badass seal of approval from good old Uncle Jay. If you still, for some reason, haven't had enough Doom, Eternal still won't leave you hanging. Battle Mode is a new take on PvP, where you play as either the Slayer or one of 6 demon types in a 2v1 round-based arena battle. The 6 demon classes each fit different archetypes with unique abilities and strengths. The Mancubus is your tank, the Archvile is your support, etc. You can summon other demon types and use your abilities to do your best to overwhelm the Slayer. Unlike 2016, this isn't a Slayer vs Slayer arena shooter, where his arsenal is fragmented and reduced for balance. Battle Mode simulates Doom's core PvE experience, except you can play as the demons, and I think that's pretty creative. I haven't played a ton of this mode, but I played enough to see that there's strategy and depth here. Between choosing demon combinations and the perks you can pick between rounds, playing as a demon is just as fun as playing as a Slayer, and I found it to be pretty well balanced between sides, at least as a low-ranking player who hasn't spent 30 hours finding the best strategy and combos. But if Battle Mode doesn't tickle your fancy, you might like Horde Mode better, a wave-based single-player sequence of similar battle arenas arranged in a repeating pattern. Horde Mode takes you through 3 locations from the campaign and each DLC, and is essentially an endless survival-type mode with cute breaks in between sections. The goal is to rack up as many points as possible based on the different ways you can get points, from glory kills and headshots to collecting coins and special bounty waves that give you score multipliers. In between each mission, there's also traversal and blitz rounds that break up the combat and let you earn additional points. What's essentially a spiritual successor to Arcade Mode from Doom 2016, Horde Mode is the leaderboard climbing challenge that players can compete in. But the only thing I find odd is that you only start with one weapon. and after each main mission, you get another weapon at random until your wheel is full. Having RNG elements as significant as which weapons you can use, I think is counterintuitive, not only to the competitive leaderboard aspect of the mode, but to Doom Eternal's combat design overall, because the game wasn't designed to only be fought with the combat shotgun or the 1 or 2 random weapons you get after it. Every enemy type has a weapon and tool that's best used against it, and whether you have the right weapon to fight something, being left up to chance doesn't sit right with me. Part of me would have rather preferred a simplified, endless wave survival mode without all the blitz rounds and bounties and set dressing here. But hey, I'm a few years late to the party, so what do I know? Doom Eternal is the faster, harder, and more complex evolution of a formula that already works so well. From its combat, to its level design, to its story, environments, and art direction, everything has evolved in a way that feels right. It's innovation without the compromise of identity. Whether I prefer Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal is damn near impossible to say. On one hand, Doom 2016 is a simple, masterfully crafted ride of unapologetic fun, but on the other, Doom Eternal is one of the most mechanically satisfying first-person shooters to master that even after 50 hours, I still haven't truly gotten the hang of. With a gun to my head, I'd probably go with Doom 2016, as the few minor gripes I have with Eternal are still gripes nonetheless. But whichever title you prefer, let me know in the comments, because one thing can be said for certain. Doom Eternal fucking rules, and hopefully, after this long-ass video, you now understand why. Anyways, thanks for watching. That's it for me. I'm Jay, and I'm done talking. Holy fuck, is that a fucking chainsaw shield? I'm playing the ever-living fuck out of this. Jesus Christ, I'm gonna...